Hi, I'm Mindy McGinnis, author of Not a Drop to Drink and In a Handful of Dust. I have a new book coming out in October, A Madness So Discreet, which is a gothic historical thriller set in an insane asylum. I did a lot of research on was lobotomies. And if you read A Madness So Discreet, you'll find out that lobotomies actually play a pretty large part in the plot. And I came up with this idea and the setting and the time period only to discover that they didn't actually perform lobotomies in the 1890s. So that was a pretty big bummer. Quick and dirty lobotomy lesson. Your frontal lobe up here, this part of your brain, this is where your personality lives. And in a lobotomy, a doctor will take an instrument, and if it's a frontal lobotomy, they will shove it up, like right here, up through your occipital lobe. It probably hurts. And if it's a temporal lobotomy, they go in here in your temple. And basically it just, so when your frontal lobe is damaged, your behavior changes, your personality changes. And it can change for the better or for the worse. It's definitely not an exact science. They would literally take an object and stick it up in your brain and go like this and pull it back out. The medical establishment in 1890 was aware of the frontal lobe being the personality seat of the brain because of a man named Phineas Gage. Phineas's job was to take a tamping iron, which was about 4 feet long and 13 pounds, and he would tamp gunpowder down into a hole, which someone else would then ignite it, and they would blow apart rocks to make way for roads and railroads and stuff like that. So one day in 1870, Phineas was doing this exactly, and he was tamping, and the gunpowder that he was tamping ignited, and it blew his rod up through the air, and it actually went into his face right here, right underneath his cheekbone, and came out the top of his head, and it blew straight through his brain. And he was fine. I mean, he wasn't fine, but he lived and he was okay. And everybody thought that was this big miracle. It was this amazing thing that he had lived through this, but his personality changed for the worse. In his case, he had been this really, really nice guy, and he became kind of a jerk. So this was one way that people became aware of the frontal lobe and its function.
There are many reenactments of the path that the barb would have taken through Phineas's skull. But this is my favorite because he looks surprised, and he probably was.
So Phineas became rather famous because of this accident, and actually his skull and his tamping iron are at the Harvard Museum if you want to see them. I kind of wish I could have seen Phineas like for real because he was pretty hot. I found this picture of him, and I think that he's probably my historical boyfriend. 20 years ago, I would have said Billy the Kid or Doc Holliday, but Google has kind of ruined history for those of us that grew up in the 90s. So I found that picture, and I'm like, he can look that good after having a tamping iron blown through his skull, and he's missing an eye. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what he looked like before. Because Madness So Discreet comes out October 6th.